The divine ultimatum. The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, transmitted through every communication system on Earth simultaneously. Television screens flickered to life in the middle of soap operas. Radio stations fell silent before the alien voice cut through static. Even smartphones buzzed with the impossible signal that bypassed every security protocol humanity had ever created. The voice spoke in perfect, emotionless English, though it was clearly not human. People of the third planet of the Sol system, you are commanded to witness the divine mandate of Emperor Kithara, supreme ruler of the celestial dominion, master of 700 worlds, and divine voice of the cosmic order. In the emergency command center beneath the Pentagon, President Sarah Chen stood frozen as the holographic display materialized before her. The figure that appeared was unlike anything in Earth's imagination. Tall and ethereal, with skin that seemed to contain stars, Emperor Kithara sat upon a throne carved from what appeared to be crystallized space itself. His eyes held the cold indifference of someone who had never been told no in his 1,000-year reign. Your species has been evaluated, the Emperor continued, his voice carrying across every populated continent. You have achieved basic space, travel, developed primitive energy weapons, and established simple planetary communication. By the laws of the Celestial Dominion, you are now subject to integration into our divine empire. General Marcus Reeves, standing beside President Chen, felt his jaw clench. The man had fought in 3 wars and thought he understood conflict. This was something else entirely. This was a godlike being treating humanity like insects to be cataloged and collected. You have exactly 1 rotation of your planet to comply with the following terms, Emperor Kithara declared. First, all governmental structures will be dissolved and replaced by appointed Dominion overseers. Second, your military forces will surrender all weapons and submit to reconditioning. Third, your population will be relocated to designated sectors for efficient resource management. Fourth, your planet's materials will be harvested for the greater good of the Dominion. Across the globe, panic erupted in some cities while others fell into stunned silence. But in the command center, President Chen felt something different rising in her chest. It wasn't fear. It was rage. Compliance will result in your species' preservation as useful citizens of the Dominion, the Emperor continued. Resistance will result in complete planetary sterilization. You have 1 day to decide. Do not mistake this offer for negotiation. The Celestial Dominion does not negotiate with primitive species. The transmission ended, leaving Earth in chaos. Within hours, every world leader was connected to the emergency channel. The arguments that followed were predictable. Some nations wanted to surrender immediately. Others demanded to fight. A few suggested trying to hide or flee to other star systems. President Chen listened to each voice before speaking. We have a choice to make, she said simply. We can live as slaves, or we can die as free human beings. But I propose a third option. General Reeves raised an eyebrow. Madam President? We fight and we win. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, the Chancellor of the European Federation spoke up. Sarah, with respect, this Emperor has 700 worlds. We barely have 1 moon base. That's exactly why we're going to win, Chen replied. He's never faced anyone who had nothing left to lose. Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had been quietly observing from the corner, stepped forward. Madam President, there's something you need to know. Something we've been working on in secret. For the past 5 years, Dr. Vasquez had led a classified project called Deep Strike. Originally designed as a defense against asteroid impacts, the system had evolved into something far more sophisticated. Using a network of hidden satellites and ground-based installations, they had created a planetary defense system that could strike targets anywhere in the solar system with devastating precision. The beauty of Deep Strike, Dr. Vasquez explained to the assembled leaders, is that it doesn't look like a weapon. Our satellites appear to be weather monitoring stations and communication relays. The ground installations are disguised as earthquake research facilities. No alien scout would recognize the threat, but Deep Strike was only the beginning. Over the next 18 hours, as Earth's leaders announced their unified decision to resist, the planet transformed. Military forces from every nation began sharing. resources, and intelligence. Scientists who had spent decades competing now worked side by side. Corporate rivals opened their research facilities to each other. The response to Emperor Kithara was broadcast exactly 24 hours after his ultimatum. President Chen, flanked by leaders from every major nation, looked directly into the camera as she delivered humanity's answer. "Emperor Kithara of the Celestial Dominion," she began, her voice steady and clear. "We have considered your offer. We have weighed our options. We have made our decision. The answer is no." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "Across the cosmos. We will not surrender our world. We will not submit to your rule. We will not allow our children to grow up as slaves in your empire. If you want Earth, you will have to take it from us. But know this, we are not the primitive species you believe us to be. We are humanity, and we have never learned how to quit." The transmission ended and Earth held its breath. On the bridge of his flagship, the Celestial Throne, Emperor Kithara stared at the communication display in disbelief. In his 1,000 years of rule, no species had ever refused the divine mandate. Primitive worlds begged for mercy. Advanced civilizations recognized the futility of resistance. But these humans had looked into the face of extinction and chosen defiance. Grand Admiral Vextal, a reptilian warrior who had conquered dozens of worlds, approached the Emperor's throne. "Your Divine Majesty, perhaps they do not understand the consequences of their choice." Emperor Kithara's eyes flared with cosmic fire. "Oh, they understand perfectly. That's what makes this so insulting." He stood from his throne, his form radiating power that made the air itself hum. "Very well. If these humans wish to play at war, we shall give them war. Assemble the 9th Fleet. All 200 ships." "Your Majesty," Vextal ventured carefully, "surely such overwhelming force is unnecessary for one primitive world." The Emperor turned, and his gaze could have melted steel. "Admiral, this is no longer about conquest. This is about sending a message to the galaxy. No species, no matter how desperate or deluded, refuses the divine mandate. Earth will burn until nothing remains but ash and regret." As the largest fleet in Dominion history began moving toward Earth, humanity prepared for the fight of their lives. In secret facilities around the globe, weapons that had never been tested were rushed into production. Children were evacuated to underground bunkers that had been expanded and reinforced. Scientists worked around the clock to enhance the deep strike system. But perhaps most importantly, humanity did something that the Emperor had never encountered in his 1,000 years of conquest. They stopped fighting each other entirely. Old enemies became allies. Religious differences were set aside. Political boundaries dissolved in the face of species extinction. General Reeves stood in the primary command center, watching displays that showed the approaching Dominion fleet. "They're coming with everything they have," he told President Chen. 200 warships, each one capable of destroying a city. President Chen nodded grimly. "Then we better make sure our first shot counts." Dr. Vasquez approached with a tablet, showing the latest calculations. "Deep Strike will have one opportunity for maximum impact. If we can catch their fleet in formation, we might disable enough ships to level the playing field. And if we miss, then we improvise," Chen replied. "It's what humans do best." As the Dominion fleet entered the outer solar system, moving with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey, they had no idea that Earth was watching every move. Hidden sensors tracked their approach. Quantum computers calculated firing solutions. And across the planet, 7 billion humans prepared to show the galaxy what happened when you threatened their home. The Emperor's message had been clear: submit or face annihilation. Humanity's response was equally clear: they would rather die on their feet than live on their knees. The stage was set for a battle that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be human. The day the galaxy trembled 3 days. Later, the Celestial Dominion's 9th Fleet reached Earth's orbital space. 200 warships arranged themselves in perfect formation, a display of power that had never failed to break enemy morale. Each vessel was a kilometer long, bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's surface. On the bridge of the Celestial, Throne Emperor Cathara gazed down at the blue-green world that had dared to defy him. The planet looked peaceful from orbit, with white clouds swirling over vast oceans and green continents. It was almost beautiful, which made what he was about to do feel even more satisfying. "Begin the bombardment," he commanded. "Target their major population centers first. I want them to watch their civilization crumble before they die." Grand Admiral Vextal transmitted the order to the fleet. Across 200 ships, weapon systems powered up with a sound like distant thunder. Energy cannons that could melt through steel like butter began to track toward Earth's major cities. In the Deep Strike Command Center buried beneath Colorado's Rocky Mountains, Dr. Vasquez watched the enemy fleet through her sensor array. "They're in position," she reported to President Chen and General Reeves. "Perfect formation, just like you predicted." General Reeves had studied every military engagement in human history. He knew that overwhelming confidence was often the enemy's greatest weakness. The Dominion fleet was positioned to deliver maximum psychological impact, not to defend against counterattack. They had never needed to worry about retaliation from the worlds they conquered. "All stations report ready," came the voice from the primary weapon control center. Around the globe, 200 hidden installations had been tracking the enemy fleet for hours. Quantum-linked targeting systems ensured that every shot would strike simultaneously. President Chen took a deep breath. The next few seconds would determine whether humanity survived or joined the list of extinct species that had opposed the Celestial Dominion. "Dr. Vasquez, you may fire when ready." Firing Deep Strike Array in 3, 2, 1, execute. From Earth's surface, the attack was invisible. 200 beams of pure energy, each one precisely calibrated and focused, lanced upward through the atmosphere. They struck the Dominion fleet with the coordination of a symphony and the force of controlled lightning. The effect was devastating. Alien ships that had never taken serious damage suddenly found their shields failing and their hull plating melting. Power systems overloaded as the energy beams found their targets with impossible accuracy. In the space of 10 seconds, 47 Dominion warships were either destroyed outright or crippled beyond repair. On the celestial throne, Emperor Cathara felt the ship shudder as the energy beams struck their aft shields. Alarms blared across the bridge as damage reports flooded in. For the first time in his 1,000-year reign, the Emperor experienced something completely foreign to him: surprise. "How?" he demanded, gripping the arms of his throne as the ship rocked from secondary explosions. "How did they strike us from the planet's surface?" Grand Admiral Vextal was frantically coordinating damage control when the second wave hit. This time, the attack came from multiple directions. Kinetic projectiles launched from hidden installations on Earth's moons slammed into the fleet's flanks. Plasma charges deployed from camouflage satellites created a crossfire that turned the perfect formation into chaos. But the humans weren't finished. As the Dominion fleet tried to regroup and return fire, they discovered that Earth's atmosphere itself had become a weapon. Dr. Vasquez had spent years developing atmospheric manipulation technology. Now, as the alien ships attempted to target Earth's cities, they found their energy beams scattered and deflected by precisely controlled electromagnetic fields in the upper atmosphere. "Impossible," Emperor Cathara breathed, watching his mighty fleet stumble like a boxer who had walked into an unexpected uppercut. "No primitive species possesses such technology." That was when President Chen's voice cut through the chaos, broadcast on every Dominion communication frequency. "Emperor Cathara, this is President Sarah Chen of Earth. You wanted to see our response to your ultimatum. This is it." The Emperor's eyes blazed with fury. "You think this minor setback changes anything? I still have over 100 ships. You have one planet." "You're right," Chen replied calmly. "We do have one planet. But you made a mistake, Emperor. You assumed that because we're primitive, we're weak. You forgot that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones with nothing left to lose." As if summoned by her words, the third wave of Earth's counterattack began. From the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, dozens of objects that had been disguised as space rocks suddenly activated. They weren't asteroids at all, but automated defense platforms that had been secretly deployed over the past decade. Each one was armed with experimental weapons that used principles the Dominion had never encountered. The platforms attacked using what Dr. Vasquez called smart swarm tactics. Instead of trying to overpower the alien ships, they targeted critical systems with surgical precision. Navigation computers were hacked and corrupted. Life support systems were overloaded. Communication arrays were jammed with carefully crafted interference patterns. Within an hour, the Ninth Fleet was in full retreat. 63 ships had been destroyed, and most of the survivors were barely functional. The Emperor's flagship limped away from Earth orbit, its shields flickering and its hull scarred by impacts from weapons that shouldn't have existed. But the most shocking moment came as the fleet reached the edge of the solar system. Waiting for them was a reception committee that made Emperor Kithra's blood run cold. Ships from a dozen different species, all of them watching the battle with intense interest. The Zephyrian Republic, the Mantari Commonwealth, the Silicon Collective, and others had been drawn by reports of the conflict. They had come expecting to witness another routine Dominion conquest. Instead, they had watched a primitive species hand the Emperor his first major defeat in centuries. Ambassador Kreeth of the Zephyrian Republic opened a communication channel to the retreating Dominion fleet. "Emperor Kithara, this is most educational. We had not realized that your divine mandate could be refused." The implications hit the Emperor like a physical blow. For 1,000 years his empire had grown because everyone believed resistance was futile. Now, representatives from dozens of species had watched humans prove that the celestial dominion could be beaten. The psychological impact would ripple across the galaxy. Back on Earth, President Chen addressed the world and the galaxy simultaneously. Today, humanity faced annihilation and chose to fight. We didn't win because we were stronger or more advanced than our enemies. We won because we refused to accept that defeat was inevitable. She paused, looking up at the stars where alien ships from multiple species were still gathering to witness the aftermath. To every species watching this transmission, remember what you saw here. Remember that sometimes the smallest voice can say no to the mightiest empire. Remember that freedom is not given by those in power. It is taken by those who refuse to kneel. General Reeves stepped forward to add his own message. The Celestial Dominion learned something today. They learned that humans don't fight because we think we can win. We fight because some things are worth fighting for, even if victory seems impossible. Dr. Vasquez, exhausted but triumphant, provided the technical details that would spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Our defensive systems were built using principles of adaptation and innovation. When faced with an impossible challenge, we didn't try to match our enemy's strength. We found new ways to turn their advantages into weaknesses. The battle's end marked the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. Within days, rebellions began erupting on worlds that had been under Dominion control for centuries. Species that had accepted their fate as conquered peoples suddenly remembered what it felt like to hope for freedom. Emperor Kithara, nursing his wounds and his wounded pride aboard his damaged flagship, realized that his 1,000-year empire was about to face its greatest crisis. Not because Earth had defeated his fleet, but because Earth had shown the galaxy that the Celestial Dominion was not invincible. The humans had done more than defend their world. They had shattered the myth of imperial invincibility. They had reminded the galaxy that even the smallest world could stand up to the mightiest empire if its people were willing to pay the price for freedom. As ships from dozens of species formed, an impromptu alliance around Earth, offering trade agreements and mutual defense pacts, one thing became clear. Humanity had not just survived its first contact with galactic civilization. They had announced themselves as a force that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. The Emperor had demanded Earth's submission and received humanity's defiance. In trying to crush one small world, he had awakened something that would ultimately transform the entire galaxy. The age of unchallenged imperial domination was over. The age of human determination had begun.